So, so you've shown me the letters. So I was writing an article for 417 magazine. I write for them sometimes, and they wanted me to do this small little article on Louise, and I went down and interviewed her, and I was like, you guys need to do a longer article. This is amazing. And
that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah, tell him I gave you that.
Yes, and she gave it to me and personalized it to Gary.
That was not the right one. That was Gary Whittaker.
Oh, there you go. No, just kidding. It's my actual name. Well, one, can I just say, would you say you're the quickest witted 85-year-old?
I don't know any other 85-year-olds. I run with a younger bunch.
But so the letters, when I was writing this article
on
you, and you said, I have these letters from Brian Epstein when we're corresponding. And actually you said, they've never been published before, if you guys want to publish them. And I was like, yeah. But what I love about it is there's a line in there, it's I think like 6 months before or something, maybe before they really break. And it says, one day we really do hope someday they'll break in the States. It was just this, they didn't have any idea on that side of it, right?
No.
And you're driving around, they're like, some of us care, some of us don't care. And just to think of that, and a few months later, and kind of the world kind of changed a little bit.
Yeah.
So I love that you being this unique part of the story that maybe people hadn't known before. And you were there, were you there at Ed Sullivan? And
yes. Shall I tell you the story about when I arrived to meet my brother, to see the Ed Sullivan show?
Yes, please.
Okay. Again, Capitol Records had invited me to be there for the show and to be able to see my brother. So I arrived in New York just about an hour or so after they had arrived. And they were already up in the presidential suite in the Plaza Hotel. So when I checked in, George had booked for me as well. And so I got a message at the front desk to go on up to the 14th floor. They were in the presidential suite, and go and join him. So I went and put my luggage in my room, which was on the 6th floor. Then I got in the elevator and went the rest of the way up to the 14th floor. When I got out of the elevator, I looked at the numbers, on the wall, and okay, so down that way. So I started going off down the corridor towards the number of the suite that they were in. So halfway down the corridor, there's a big table right across the corridor, and a big bunch of people, and Pinkerton security people, all kinds of people, a big mob of people, all shouting and everything. So I thought, well, okay, it's beyond this bunch of people where the number was, So I thought, okay, so I tried to kind of scrooch past them quietly, get behind them. And so the Pinkerton guy slams me in the chest and says, "Where are you going?" I said, "Sir." And I said, I'm just going down there to see my brother. And so the whole people that were there all started laughing. And they said, "Do you have any idea how many times that's been tried today?" And I was a little embarrassed, and I said, "No." I said, "But he told me to come on up." And so they were laughing more, And I said, "Well, I happen to have that picture that's on the back of my book. It was a Polaroid picture that he'd taken in Benton when he came to visit me in September of that year." And so I showed him the picture, showed the Pinkerton guys and everybody this picture that had my brother on it. So they looked at it and they all passed it around and everything. They all looked at it and said, "Yeah, that looks like one of them." So they went down the corridor, knocked at the door, and said, "Okay." He came, rushing out. He came dashing down the corridor like this, And then we met halfway down and spun each other around. And then all the people who'd been laughing at me started to cheer. So I call that incident from jeers to cheers.
Yeah, that's great. So I wanted to do one last thing to hear you talk about, but you have Liverpool legends that some people know about, some people don't, but probably in this area have all heard the name at least. Tell everyone what that is.
Yes, well, Liverpool legends, one of the most wonderful things that happened about 6 weeks after my brother died was that I have the feeling that wherever he went, wherever his spirit went, that he had a look around the planet and looked around for a brother for me. And he found this guy, Marty, and I met him 6 weeks after my brother died, and he was playing George in a band. And I became very, very good friends with him. In fact, I adopted him as my new brother. And even to the extent that his parents, who are years younger than me, allow me to call them Mum and Dad. But anyway, Marty and I started a band called Liverpool Legends about 10, 12 years ago, a long time ago now. And we wanted it to be the best, most authentic band that we could find. I know there's probably about 300 or 400 Beatle bands across the planet, but I wanted this to be very genuine and to portray the way the Beatles themselves were. Like, one of the things that was very, very endearing about them, and one of the things that you probably all love about them, was the fact that they never ever became big-headed or conceited. You know, they never ever acted like they were big shots. I can remember one time they were asked, with all this adulation, don't you sometimes think that you must be gods? And one of them turned and said, no, whenever we get to feel like that, we just look at Ringo. So they always made fun of themselves. In fact, they always had this feeling about, they used to call him poor old Elvis, because there was only one of him. And, you know, they just enjoyed the fact that there was the four of them, and it didn't matter what kind of traumas they were going through, because there was the four of them. They could make fun of each other and just ride through whatever was happening. Whereas they felt so sorry for poor old Elvis, because there was only one of him, and whatever he was having to go through, he had to go through all by himself. So they always had this great sympathy for him, for only being one of him.
Well, that's wonderful. Now, let me have you end this way, because I do think, I don't know how to say this exactly, but part of the Beatles was, I mean, I know they were kind of controversial when they came out, but there's
Not really.
Yeah, well, just the hair, I guess, but with the 85-year-olds of that era, right? There was controversy, but
they didn't live that long back in those days.
In the 60s, the 85-year-olds were 65.
No, 70 was considered to be ancient.
Yeah.
Back then, yeah.
You're past ancient, and look at you.
Past
You're hot. You're hot. Woo.